Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Prof. Martin Buchert, I hand over to you to do the introduction and handle the questions at the end. Thank you and welcome to everybody. Thank you for being here today.
Okay, well, it's a real pleasure to have Professor Japie Greeff here with us. So I'll just say a few words to introduce Japie, who's now professor of computer science, but Japie has a very interesting, somewhat unusual background for an academic. So he studied electrical engineering part-time at and has a PhD from the University of Johannesburg. And then he went on to work some 17 years in industry. So he worked at the NRF and Heartbeats Hook Radio Observatory for 5 years, and then in electronics for radio astronomy, and then for 7 years at Zaptronics and Utah Labs with vehicle tracking and the smart grid. And then he worked on high volume manufacturing for another company, and then at Enterprise software and dimension data on more computer science. And Japie's been in the ivory tower for 7 years at Northwest University, where he is deputy director of the School of Computer Science and Information Systems. He's a NITheCS Associate Co-PI of the Genomics, Bioinformatics, and Advanced Medicine thematic area, and also the lead expert for the BRICS Business Council Skills Development Working Group, which he will tell us about. So I think Japie's unique background gives him some interesting perspectives for us from academia. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Martin. And thank you everyone for attending this talk. Obviously, I think many people will see the recording as we're having it on a Friday afternoon, which is never a good time to give a talk. But I just wanted to take a moment to also recognize some of the delegates that are attending from our international group. So Dr. Liu Zhenyang from the BRICS Business Council in China, who's the chairperson for the Skill Development and Applied Technology and Innovation Working Group, and as well as Ms. Mapule Nkaiwa, who is the chairperson on the South African side for the Skill Development Working Group, as well as Mr. Niku Chen, who's the CEO for Wise Insight. And then there were many other people that are invited, and if I haven't seen them online yet, but if they join, thank you very much for joining this lecture. So what I'll be talking about is collaborating on BRICS plus skills for sustainable economic growth. So this is to sort of introduce the work we are doing in terms of skills development, as well as to put forward the overall model and sort of invite people along. So I'm not going to say too much about myself. Obviously, Martin has just done a bit of an introduction to me. These are the places where I am associated with. But obviously, in this context, I'm speaking as the BRICS Council's Skills Development, Applied Technology, and Innovation Working Group lead expert. So I've been trying to coordinate everything to get all of our experts to kind of work together and really face the same direction when we talk about skills in the BRICS context. So just a bit of an agenda. So I want to talk just a little bit, 1 or 2 slides on BRICS Plus, the trading group, what the different working groups are in the BRICS Business Council, the scope of our South African expert group at the moment, the skills agenda and really what we're trying to achieve, how we look at training and certification, the economic model, because obviously BRICS is focused partly largely on trade. So we want to see how this can actually impact the economy in a sustainable way. I want to talk a little bit about the Solutions Awards and the Innovation Awards. I'm going to put forward a unified prototype company to just show how the skills can kind of interact with each other, and then just talk a little bit about the future and how we see these things grow over time in a productive way. And then, you know, how we look at funding and further collaboration, and then to throw open an invitation to everyone, you know, should this spark your interest, I'm really hoping we can work together. So to start, obviously BRICS, it's been meeting formally as BRICS since 2009 with Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And then South Africa joined in 2013 to make it the BRICS group. At the moment, it covers 30% of the land surface of the Earth is covered by BRICS countries, about 45% of the global population, and 36% of the global GDP when adjusted for purchasing power parity. It's also not something that is completely static in that there is a rotating chairship between the BRICS countries. So in 2021, India was the chair, 2022, China was the chair, 2023, it was South Africa, 2024 this year is Russia, and Brazil will be the chair in 2025. So obviously, again, not being static, there are a couple of countries that have joined as of the 1st of January in 2024. So they are Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and Ethiopia. And although, you know, there are many goals and, you know, lots of discussions around what the BRICS plus nations are trying to achieve, but really in the BRICS Business Council, the main focus is trade and economic prosperity between the different countries. And that is very much where we are focused. So in terms of the structure for the BRICS Business Council, so it falls under, obviously, South Africa, where we are a BRICS member. There is an international BRICS Business Council, where each of the individual countries are members of that, and each country has their own BRICS Business Council. And under the BRICS Business Council, there are a number of individual working groups that are focused on different areas. There are also other BRICS departments, so things like the BRICS Business Women's Alliance, which also, you know, falls under the ambit of BRICS. But in the South African context, the South African BRICS Business Council basically reports directly to the presidency, so it works the exact same way as other government departments, but it is partnered very closely with the Department of Trade and Industry. So it's seen kind of at the level of a government department on the national scale. But now it's not just one thing. There are different working groups inside of the BRICS Business Council. So there are 9 different working groups, focusing each of them on a different element of the economy. So that will be agribusiness, aviation, trade and investment, the digital economy, financial services, the green economy and energy, infrastructure and manufacturing. And the final one is the one that I want to talk about, which is the skills development, applied technology and innovation working group. And this one really tries to serve all the other working groups as well. So it's not trying to develop skills in a vacuum, but really trying to see how skills actually play out in, obviously in this instance, the South African context, but obviously we want to look at the international context and collaborate with the other BRICS countries to make sure that we approach it in a unified way. So what is our dream? I mean, what is the overall goal we're trying to achieve as this working group? And it's really to create a pipeline of skills that lead to future and emerging jobs for our youth. It's absolutely what we are trying to do, to build this pipeline, to really invest in it over time, and to make sure it stays up to date with our work in collaborating with other countries as well as inside of our own country. And the strategy diagram in a sort of in a nutshell, obviously it's a little bit more complex than this, but really it's a cyclical thing where we look at the atlas of future jobs. So what jobs and skills are needed for each of the sectors that are covered by the BRICS Business Council, as well as wider reports that we take into account from other sources in the country. And this gives us a sort of online map with a list of jobs that are looking like they could be redundant in the near future, as well as future jobs that are kind of emerging. Now we take this atlas and we arrange skill camps. So this is where we partner to train these skills to students and graduates that kind of supplement the work that they do at universities, colleges, and universities of technology. We try and benchmark these skills. So we use skills challenges to compete between countries, but also, additional benchmarking, which I will talk about in a little bit. And the idea of around benchmarking this is to really identify gaps, to see where we are strong, see where we are not so strong, so that we can change the training that we offer to ensure that we are doing it in a sustainable way. We also obviously are focused very much on knowledge sharing. So creating curriculums and skill standards are done in an open way so that everyone can benefit from it across the different countries, as well as across the different institutions inside of each country. We also try and share and collaborate with government and businesses quite directly in developing this work. And then finally, when we speak to younger people, we want to give guidance on what kind of jobs, will be available in the future and how can you access those jobs. So that's really the sort of circular model that we're looking at. Our filters, the things that we want to, take into account with these jobs, is access. We want to ensure that the programs don't benefit only a few. Survivability. We want to, bias towards skills that lead to immediate jobs, but also, things that will last a long time. We want to prioritize high volume jobs, so skills that actually lead to a high volume of jobs, because in the South African context, obviously, unemployment is one of the biggest risks we face as a society. So the kinds of skills that lead to jobs are the ones that we really want to focus on. We want to give South Africa a competitive edge, and we want to bias the skills that we work on in South Africa in a way that, really amplifies what we do very well. And we want to partner as much as possible. These things cannot happen in a vacuum. So we really want to work with as many universities of technology, colleges, and industry partners as we can to ensure that, that this pipeline is done appropriately. So the Atlas is also not something that we just, make up. It's based on international research that has been done, partially in Russia and various places, but really taking this analysis of the future jobs that are looking up and giving it an African context, and really sort of seeing what the international trends are, and then seeing how this plays out in the South African context, and then continuously updating it. So we want to give relevant guidance to graduates and companies, continuously, to make sure that these things work appropriately. Now, in terms of our BRICS expert community, not all the institutions are represented with the same amount of people, but we've got links with a number of universities at this point in time. So specifically Northwest University, Belgium campus, Nelson Mandela University, the Durban University of Technology, Mangosuthu University of Technology, University of KwaZulu-Natal, the Vaal University of Technology, Stellenbosch University, Tshwane University of Technology, the University of the Western Cape, the National Institute of Theoretical and Computational Science. So obviously that's one of the reasons why I'm giving the seminar from here. And the experts inside of NITheCS are obviously shared with the universities that they are positioned at. We also have strong ties with the Department of Higher Education and Training, as well as the Quality Council for Trades and Occupation. And then obviously we want to have as many industry partners as we possibly can. So we do have some already, but this is something that we need to explore quite a bit more in collaboration with our other working groups to make sure that we get, as wide a voice as we possibly can. The current body, at least from the emailing list, not everyone is as active as they should be, is about 75 members of various different levels. But we want to make sure actually in this work that we really get representation from all of our tertiary education institutions in South Africa. And that's very much the goal of presenting this webinar and having it recorded, is to invite as many people as possible to come join us. So when we say skills, what are we talking about? I mean, what do we work on per individual skill? And really each skills project comprises of 3 individual components. So there's a skill standard that looks at, the professional skills that you need for that specific skill. There is a competition standard, so how you would benchmark this and compare different students and graduates. And then there is a curriculum standard for, training people in this specific skill. And the idea is to not have this be purely an academic exercise. There obviously needs to be industry input to understand how people in industry view each of those individual skills. There is input from academics as to what they mean when they talk about these specific skills. But even though we are creating standards in the BRICS context, I mean, BRICS countries don't sit in in isolation. So there are already local standards in each of the countries that we refer to, as well as international standards for each of these individual skills to sort of leverage as much of the information that exists already while, localizing it to each of our individual countries. So in the South African ecosystem, again, we do have quite a structure as to how our qualifications work here in South Africa. And you will see I've marked some things in green and some things in orange. The things that are marked in green are standardized curriculums. So if you look at our general education and training, so this is in primary school and high school, I mean, those are curriculums that are shared between provinces. Each school does pretty much the same thing, and they all get measured against a common standard in the final year of study. Obviously, a lot of our skills are going to be technology-based. So we're looking at things like the coding and robotics curriculum, the technology curriculum, the computer and applications technology curriculum, as well as information technology curriculum, which is taught at school. So that's your primary and high schools. Then we've got colleges, so TVET colleges, which are generally governed by the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, and they provide occupational certificates. And these are seen at level 5, so NQF level 5. So that's the National Qualifications Framework, against which all qualifications are benchmarked. So these occupational certificates generally sit at level 5, and they cover a huge number of skills that we obviously refer to in the standards that we create. But they also offer national diplomas, which sit at NQF level 6. So additional theoretical training is added there. And all of these TVET colleges offer curriculums that are, again, standardized. So they are national standards that cover the occupational certificate in software development, in Internet of Things, in artificial intelligence, and a huge list of other qualifications. So those ones are all standard. But then if you look at the universities of technology, as well as the traditional universities, they will offer, on the traditional university side, largely degrees, so bachelor's and honors degrees. And then the universities of technology will offer national diplomas, advanced diplomas, and honors degrees. But those are not standardized curriculums. So each university, although they register their qualification and give it structure, it's not necessarily common between the different universities. But they do refer to international standards. So in something like information technology and computer science, we would look at things like the ACM curriculums for computer science, the curriculum for IT, etc. And those are, again, standardized, and you can benchmark against them. But in our context, we are looking basically at certifications rather than standalone qualifications. So this means if we look at one of the curriculums that we've completed now, around machine learning and big data, this is something that you can have multiple entry points into. So you can certify against this qualification, whether you've got a national diploma or an advanced diploma or a bachelor's degree or an honors degree. It will measure in the training the specific skills that you need to demonstrate to be certified in that qualification. So it stands a little bit outside of the national qualifications framework, but is a common standard against which people can be certified for their practical and vocational skills. So how we see this working is obviously using the systems that we're developing inside of this work. So we take things like the standard curriculum that has been developed through collaboration with experts. And then we take in students who have got qualifications from a variety of different fields. So here I've just used the examples of information systems or electronic engineering or IT or computer science or data analysis, whatever the case may be. We take in these students and look at their curriculums and benchmark them. So we've got a benchmarking system where we've got benchmarking references. And this tells us, how much knowledge has already been covered in those qualifications. And then wherever there is a shortfall, we offer training. And that training is done largely, through video and self-guided training, which I will show in a little bit of time. And then the students are assessed against a common standard. And again, the assessment of these skills is very, very practical. So it's looking very much at what you can do rather than, what you know. And the end result of that would be that the student or graduate has whatever degree they have or advanced diploma they have, as well as the certification that are given from the BRICS Business Council. Now, the reason that we benchmark these things is that it doesn't matter, because we've got this idea of multiple entry points, not every student is going to start at the same level. So some of them on the benchmark will only have covered a small amount of the work and would need to take up quite a bit more training in order to do the assessment, whereas others may have covered a huge amount of the work and only need a little bit of training on the training platform. But at the end of the day, the assessment certification is a common standard and is done the same for all students and graduates. So how these things are benchmarked. So we look at, the outcomes, the study guides, and the curriculums that are in place at different tertiary education institutions. And then we've taken the standard and put them into a very, very simple format. It's basically an Excel sheet, which just outlines each and every one of the skills modules that you need to cover with each of their individual knowledge areas. And you just mark, as a lecturer, for each of these skills areas, you would read through the Excel list and just mark with Bloom's taxonomy how much of it you cover. So if you cover just a little tiny bit of it, mark it low. If you cover a huge amount of it, mark it high. And then the benchmarking system basically rolls all of this up to give you a percentage evaluation to tell you how much of your course has already been covered, as well as how well that course is covered inside of the curriculum that you are doing. It doesn't need to necessarily cover everything. This is very much a guideline for the student to say that if they have done one of the degrees that has been benchmarked, they should have covered all of these, knowledge areas. But they will be tested on each of those knowledge areas. So they also have the opportunity to recover knowledge that they've been trained on previously, just to make sure that they are comfortable in all of the vocational skills when they do their certification. So the benchmarking of these qualifications currently, the system that I've designed, it sits on a database. It's basically SharePoint, which just ties each of the modules that make up programs inside of a hierarchical structure. So basically you have institutions that are made up of different faculties. Faculties are made up of departments. Departments have a number of programs inside of them, and programs have a number of modules. So as a lecturer, you benchmark your specific module, and then it just rolls up into the program going up forward inside of the benchmarking system. So this sort of allows you to look at the structure of each of the programs in quite a dynamic way. It also allows us, by tagging it into the database in this way, to tie it into years, because obviously curriculums change over time, so that the content and modules may change over time. So we want to know that if you did your degree in 2021, what was the likelihood that you've actually covered the knowledge that is inside of the curriculum that we are benchmarking against. So at the moment, when it actually goes through the process and sort of rolls up the skills that have been benchmarked, it reports on course level. So you would look at, a specific program that a student does, and this pops out the report of how much of that knowledge sits inside of the skills curriculum in the form of, simple graphs that can be interpreted by the student. And the idea would be to give this to students so that they can make an informed decision. So if they've done their degree and they wish to take this on, they need to be able to see how much work they actually need to do in order to be certified against one of these skill standards. So obviously, from my personal work, I'm obviously looking at this from the Northwest University perspective, because I'm at the Northwest University. The QCTO, looking at the standardized curriculums, is also one of the ones that we need to do first effectively to make sure that we cover that for the most part for our TVET colleges, as well as the general education and training curriculums, again, because they're standardized. But the idea is that this becomes part of the invitation at the end. I really want you to kind of engage with this idea and bring it into your own institution so that we can put them on the map as well and give students access to the certification system by giving them guidance as to how much of the work they've already covered. The approach we're taking in terms of the system, we've approached the South African Accreditation Board for all computing accreditation board. They seem to be very happy with this idea, so they want to use this to also accredit computer science and IT degrees in the South African context. And again, the idea is that you should be able to roll up the data as long as it's in a consistent format. So this also allows us the opportunity to say that if you've done, your undergraduate degree at one university and honors at a second university, you should just be able to add the two curriculums together and get an overall benchmark of where you are, provided things are in the same format. So obviously for the QCTO, this is not necessarily something that we would do from the university perspective, because really the QCTO works in a slightly different way. So that is done more in collaboration with their standards body specifically, because the curriculums are standards in their process. And then for the universities and universities of technology, that would be interacting with people on an individual basis. So that's now obviously if we benchmark qualification. So obviously if a student comes out now and says, I've done this qualification, I've seen where the benchmark stands, and I have the shortfall, there is a training platform that looks at each of the curriculums and offers video training. At the moment, it's available in Chinese and English, which covers each and every one of the areas inside of that curriculum, with video training, with assessments that you can do online to really test your skills. And then ultimately, this is a part of the same system that we will use for the certification of the students when they go through the process of getting certified, as well as competing in skills competitions. So to give you an idea, looking at the first technology one we did, which was machine learning and big data standards. So as I mentioned, it has three parts. There's the skills standard. Skills standard looks at the general skills that are needed, the vocational skills that are needed, the vocational knowledge that is needed. And then there is a course standard or a curriculum, which then looks at the specifics of the machine learning course. There's a Python course, there's a Linux course, there's a database course, a technology of big data course, a data warehousing course, as well as a data analysis and visualization course, with each of their knowledge areas and the specific things that you should be able to do inside of each of those courses. So that makes up the curriculum. And then there's finally a competition standard. So this is the one that we use to compare different students in different countries against one another. And if you ask what this is for, they are what we call future skills challenges. So these are held once a year, where we have students and graduates participating from multiple countries. It travels around between the countries. So generally the finals are held in the country that is currently chair. So the finals this year will be in Kazan in Russia. Last year's challenges in South Africa took place in Johannesburg at the NASREC Center, with some students being there in person, some doing it online. It took place over 4 days in September 2023. There were about 200 competitors from South Africa, 200 to 400 competitors from other BRICS nations, and obviously pulling in many delegates from business, university, policymakers, etc. So it's quite a big event. The next challenge is taking place from the 25th to the 29th of November at 4 different universities in South Africa. So that information will go out probably next week to just sort of finalize where each of the challenges are going to be held and what the specific skills are that are going to be looked at. But this is one of the ways that we can use to kind of benchmark our students against one another and to check where our training level is at for each of the countries. So now the question is, we've got this training, and we say that skills are super important, and we believe it leads to economic impact. But really, how does that happen? So if you've now gone through this process and you've been certified, where do you slot into the system? And for that, we've got an economic model that looks at these people that have now gone through the certification standard and how they interact with the economy in a full system. So this is roughly the model that sort of outlines how we see this working in the economic sense. So if I go through it in parts, just obviously goes through a couple of steps. So the first part starts at market analysis. So the BRICS Business Council working groups, they consistently doing, marketing reports for each of the areas that they cover, just trying to understand what the level of, interaction is in the market, and, what sort of suppliers are servicing the market in South Africa based on these reports. And the whole goal of creating market reports like this is to identify market gaps. So it doesn't necessarily have to be reports done by the BRICS Business Council. There are other bodies as well that do, market reports. But again, the idea is to try and identify, gaps in the market. And the reason you want to identify gaps in the market is so that you can produce an offering. And an offering takes in, funding from national, from industrial sources, from the BRICS Business Council, from angel investors, whatever the case may be. An offering is an extension to an existing company or an entrepreneurial. It takes in human capital as well as, actual capital. And the human capital is in the form of people that have been certified to a certain level. It also takes in, goods, services, and technology from local sources, so local raw goods, local work goods, local services, local technology, as well as goods, services, and technology from, other countries. So that's where you would import raw goods, import work goods, import services, import technology. And you put all of these things together, and that leads to work goods, services, and technology that you produce as your offering for the market. And those goods are the things that go back into the supplier database. But now the trick to this, and where we think that the economic model can be quite cyclical, is that for those things that you imported, so the imported work goods, the imported services, and the imported technology, those are all opportunities, okay? And they are opportunities specifically to collaborate with business, to take in similar sources of funding, to look at the goods, services, technology that the offering is creating, and go through a process of research and development in order to make localized versions of those processes, services, and technologies. So the process is obviously leading to goods. And once you've created localized versions of that, they become the new local work, goods, services, and technology that allow you to produce the same goods, service, and technology from the offering. Because this is a research and development process, it allows you to also generate research output for the university, as well as, allowing you to feed that knowledge back into your university curriculum, allowing you to update it. And obviously, each of the universities in South Africa has the prerogative to use the research that they do in order to commercialize it. So there's specific legislation that sort of tells universities that they should be commercializing the research that gets done. In the NWU context, that is an entity we call NWU Enterprises, but each university in South Africa has a technology transfer office, as well as some measured or some system that they use in order to create companies from research. And the idea is obviously, once these goods, services, and technology exist inside of the market, it can be brought back into the BRICS curriculum so that those standards get updated over time, so that we use more and more and more of our localized technologies, our localized services, our localized goods, because that is ultimately how we believe that this can allow us to grow the economy in a sustainable way. So the idea is very much to do this in a cyclical way. So identifying the gaps, creating the offering, establishing a presence, and identifying opportunities for localizing specific goods, service, and technology, researching those opportunities and expanding the goods, service, and technology that are in the market. Once the expansion is done, feed back this knowledge into the curriculum, which allows you to again identify new gaps with the newly trained people that you have. Now, obviously, we also want to leverage, SETA funding, because as you train people in South Africa, the SETAs very much give you the opportunity to fund young people in their additional training. So this is where we want to look at that specific offering. So this is the overall model for how it should work in the economy, but it's very easy to say, we are putting down an offering. You need a little bit more information as to what you mean by an offering. So in the BRICS context, there are actually two sets of awards that allow us to look at this. So the first one, and this one is actually taking place in Russia, in Kazan, from 22nd to the 24th of October. And the idea here is to offer, awards for unique solutions. So this is from people in academia as well as in industry to put forward their innovative solutions to the areas that are being covered by the awards, so that they can be funded, as well as, recognized in the BRICS context as being, innovative solutions to the problems that we have. So for the BRICS Solutions Award in 2024, we've got 8 themes where people can submit solutions to. So biotechnology and national health, sky, space, and communication technologies, new industry and energy, platforms and end-to-end solutions for government and public administration, competencies and staff development, artificial intelligence and digital services, climate and environmental technologies, as well as cognitive technologies and creative economy. So these are the 8 themes that are covered by the Solutions Awards. And the hope is that as many people as possible will put forward their innovative solutions to these things and compete so that we can identify the best ones and put them forward in the economies that they come from. There is also a second series of awards, which is more on the China-South Africa side. So China has a huge initiative called the Belt and Road Initiative, to, interact with countries from all over the world. And it plays out in this specific instance as the 2024 Belt and Road and BRICS competition of skill development and technology innovation. In this one, there are also 7 themes. So digital medical, advanced manufacturing, green energy, artificial intelligence, virtual simulations, digital agriculture, as well as future technologies. So those are the themes for these awards. In this one, obviously, the awards are being done in South Africa. So they'll take place from the 25th to the 29th of November at Northwest University in this specific instance. And again, we should send out the call for competition within the next week or two, so that people can submit their innovative technologies to show off what they can do in the South African context. So obviously, there are lots of skills that have been identified as being important through the different working groups. So there's a current list of about 31 that people have said are important. 2 of them have been, done and standardized, and there's committees that have already been set up as professional committees to, take forward the skill in the next steps. But there are also ones that are currently in process. So the ones that have been done are machine learning and big data, as well as building information modeling. The ones that are in progress for this round is a group of 10. So that is additive manufacturing, industrial design, augmented and virtual reality, drone operation, robotic process automation, digital capabilities for business, the Internet of Things, data analysis and visualization, as well as blockchain-based solutions. And once this group of 10 is done, obviously there are white ones that are in planning stages at the moment. So for all of these skills, for all 31 of these skills, they are competition standards to basically say, how we think people should be able to do this in an effective way. But, beyond the competition, you obviously want to put forward a skills training program that allows you to upskill people to be able to compete in competitions and, act as professionals in this field. So, thinking of the offering when we've got this roadmap of the skills we want to put forward, how would you put together an offering that uses these skills in a productive way? So obviously, if we look at it from a research and development perspective, if we look at the Innovation and Solutions Awards, one of the approaches we can take to look at things from the top down, from a research perspective, is using what's called design science research. There are other techniques as well. This one just very much focuses on, how you would develop artifacts and technologies inside of a specific context. So this is one of the ones that we are exploring very much. So that's looking from the top. But obviously, the top is not one way of, or is only one way of doing it. You can also look at it from the bottom, which is really trying to understand what kind of skills are available inside of the market and how you can put these skills together in order to create different offerings inside of the market. And this is where the sector education and training authorities, or the SETAs, come into play. So there are multiple SETAs under the government department in South Africa, and they all fund, training opportunities for graduates in order to make sure that they are actually usefully employable in the South African context. So if we take into account these two things, so say you've got a solution that you have designed, as well as access to knowledge of how you can get skilled people into your organization, how would you think about these skills in a way that allows you to create an offering into the market? So if we step through the process, okay, we've said that we will take in, human capital as well as goods, services, and technology. Now, one of the smallest ways you can do it with, sort of highly, manual processes is that you would use prototype. So you would take in goods, services, and technology, you would use skilled craftsmen, and you would make new goods, services, and technology. So that's one way of doing it inside of an entrepreneurial offering. But obviously, that's not always the most, economically viable. Generally, you want to have a product that you are designing or a product that you are manufacturing and using some sort of scale production services. So you're developing or manufacturing the same kinds of goods, service, and technology, just at a slightly higher scale. Now, in South Africa, this is one that we obviously focus on quite a lot because this is quite jobs intensive. So this is not using automation in your production line. This is very much using people in your production line to make your goods, service, and technology. But if your product is really, really great, you can also use large scale production. So, this is where your focus becomes much more economic. and you want to export things, so doing it at scale and being able to distribute these things at a much larger scale is when you would use large-scale production techniques. And the overall idea to capture here is that the goods, service, and technology should be exactly the same. It is really just the numbers that guide which of these approaches you're actually going to take. But now that's taking in goods, service, and technology. What we also need to take into account is people, right? So here in this aspect of our offering, there will be, tradespeople, there will be technicians, there will be operators with machine-specific training, and all of those things are guided by the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, as well as the Engineering Council of South Africa that capacitates things through the MERCETA. So there's lots and lots of training for different machines, different people that can do all of these things in the South African context. And this is what guides us, is these curriculums that have been defined under those training bodies. But now, again, that is just the production side of things. So you don't produce things necessarily in a vacuum. You would use, engineering skills in order to design these products. And in the Engineering Council of South Africa's codes of practice, it actually, guides you as to what each of the different kinds of engineers you can be or be, professionally certified as, what their scope of work is. So there is a document that defines what a mechatronic engineer does, what an electrical engineer does, what an electronic engineer does. And this, again, is something that is capacitated by MERCETA. When you take in graduates who go through their candidacy programs to become engineers. Again, developing products is great, but if you ever want to sell your products, you need to be able to, package them appropriately. You need to be able to set up a presence in the market. And this is where we will find that the services CETA helps to, define training opportunities for people in marketing, in web development, in communication, in packaging and design. All of those things are covered by the services CETA, and MERCETA covers more the industrial automation side of things. So how you would produce things at a much larger scale, very much covered on the industrial automation side of things. So again, we see that there are training systems that have already been developed that we can just leverage off of when we create our curriculums in order to make them work in context. Again, this is now assuming that you've got, an engineering company that is developing these products, but obviously you want to look at the effectiveness of your engineering processes and, work with your marketing in your website and everything. And for that, you need IT services. So IT services, we've got two sources that we really look at. We've got occupational certificates that are covered by, again, the QCTO, as well as the MICT CETA. And there are occupational certificates for AI development, for cloud administration, cybersecurity analysts, data science practitioners, lots and lots and lots of jobs that you can do from an IT perspective as an occupational certificate. But on the degree level at the universities, we generally take guidance from the ACM curriculums. So there are 7 main ACM curriculums for, software development, IT, information systems, data science, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things kind of define what the staff members are that you would populate your IT department with. You would also use something like robotic process automation in order to make the business processes inside of your organization run more smoothly, as well as feeding in data into data stores and a data lake, as well as interacting with the information that has been shared. The Internet of Things is obviously one of the things that measures things inside of organizations. So anything that you can measure electronically, you can use an Internet of Things device in order to pump that information up into your data store, so that your IT department can interact with it, so that your robotic process automation process can make the organization run more smoothly. And this whole, organization or, offering that we put forward needs to be managed in a specific way. So obviously here we've got, MBA programs, we've got business management programs at multiple of our universities in South Africa. You've got SAICA and, THACET, which guides how, chartered accountants and accountants inside of organizations work together. You've got the services CETA that puts forward training for human resources management. And then, in order to design this in an appropriate way, We can reference standards like TOGAF, from an enterprise architecture perspective, which shows you how you can put together an organization from these individual building blocks that are captured inside of these individual curriculums. So this is really just a prototype context. So this is not a specific organization. This is just how different departments inside of an organization would interact with one another and what sort of people they would be populated with, looking at their specific curriculums. So the reason we went through and made this prototype company is so that we can look at those 10 skills that we've identified and see how they interact with one another, so that when we actually create the documents for these specific skills, we can see how they need to be, interrelated to one another and how they influence each other over time. So all of the skills that have been put forward are inside of the overall model, except for the building information modeling, simply because that one isn't necessarily more process and data driven. That is more looking at, when you actually instantiate this organization inside of a physical building, you would need to take into account that skill as well. But that's a little bit outside of my scope. So it's not one that's in this model at this point in time. So, those are the first 10. So this is the prototype context we've put forward for those 10 skills. But the idea is that, this is a process that continues beyond this next batch of skills. So one of the next ones that we can look at as a proposal is clean energy. There are there's lots of work being done in things like small modular reactors and even larger nuclear reactors in all of the BRICS countries, because energy is a huge problem, and clean energy specifically is one that we want to look at. So if you were to build a small modular reactor or even a larger reactor, what kind of skills do you need from the people that would populate that sort of reactor in order to make it run appropriately? And these are ones that we've identified just as prototypes to say that if we were to add these ones, we should be able to influence that market in an effective way. Because our idea is that, in order to do something like a nuclear reactor, you need to be able to measure lots and lots of physical values, turn it into data, and largely influence it remotely. You don't necessarily want to put people right next to a reactor the whole time. So, things like the Internet of Things and, measurement services, industrial internet that doesn't go down, mobile robotics, in order to design it appropriately, digital twinning and modeling things are all skills that, should contribute to the clean energy side of things. So there's, again, a prototype that we can look at in order to give context for the curriculum and standard skills development. We also need to sort of expand our minds in terms of skills, because obviously lots of countries tend to get stuck a little bit on the idea of, technical skills being the most important ones. Not all skills are technical in nature. So, for example, in the BRICS plus countries, there is a huge problem in terms of the population aging. So they're aging at different rates, but there is a huge need for care for people who are disabled or elderly, and this care needs pretty much overwhelms the families of the people that need to supply it, and governments don't necessarily have dedicated care facilities to take care of disabled and elderly people. So one of the proposals we've put forward is to look at something called the care economy. So this is looking at specifically skills programs for social and health support and care for older persons, and creating a sort of care career trajectory for youth who want to go into it. We want to look here at culturally relevant curriculum. So looking at, what does it mean to look at to take care of someone with a mental health disability, with a normal disability, an elderly person in China, in South Africa, in Russia. We want to be able to accredit these sort of carers, because obviously this is a very, sensitive area. So providing training that isn't, properly accredited is very difficult. It also gives us the opportunity, if we standardize between countries, to look at specialized care. So specifically looking at things like, dementia or, very specific areas of care. And again, being able to register as a carer in the BRICS network allows us to put forward one of the things we call the skills passport, which is an opportunity for us to say, once we've standardized skills between our BRICS countries, we should be able to trade those skills more effectively than the normal visa process. So that is something that is also being planned, is what's called the BRICS Plus Passport. So obviously the next step, so I mean, the first of the next tranche of skills that we're looking at is data analysis and visualization. So here what we are doing is we are analyzing curriculum data from the universities that are part of our expert network, so that we can see, what skills are being taught in the South African context and what is the sort of the best practice we can put forward. We also putting forward questionnaires amongst both academia as well as expert teams inside of industry in order to get an understanding of what do people mean when they talk about something like data analysis and visualization. What does that skill actually translate into in our context? And the artifacts that we will create, there's largely going to be 4 artifacts that we want to create for each of these skills. The first one is a needs analysis to really just understand what we talk about for each of those skills, what the needs are in industry for each of those skills. Beyond the needs analysis is an initial layout of skills components to say, what are all the things that a practitioner in each of those fields needs to be able to do. Once we've got the initial layout of those components, they get drafted together for inclusion in the standards documents. And here is where we obviously collaborate between countries to make sure that each of our individual countries, inclusion documents are similar, put them all together, however, into effectively version 1 of the document, which is our 4th artifact that is generated for each of the individual components for each of the skills. Now, how are we going to fund it? So there's really 2 things that we're looking at the moment. The first one is that there is an allowance program in draft status. So this is very much, straightforward, paying experts an allowance for participating in the standards work. The idea is not to make people rich, but obviously this is effort. So there is funding that's being made available in order to straight up pay people to do it. But then there's a larger funding proposal that is actually aimed quite a bit wider than just the BRICS Business Council to really look at the more practical ways of making this happen. So here we are looking more at things like teaching relief. So if you are to be participating in the project, you should be able to have a semester of your time just bought out by replacing you with a postgraduate student or something like that, as well as travel, because obviously for standards work, a lot of it can be done, virtually, but sometimes you need to just sit a lot, around the same table and make sure that everyone is on the same page for a dedicated amount of time. So things like travel, teaching relief, we would like to have a conference every year or every second year that really sort of describes all of these things from a research perspective, as well as inviting our industry partners together. So this document is being put together at the moment. It's about 3/4 of the way there. It goes through to the BRICS Business Council, to our international partners in their specific BRICS Business Councils, the Department of Higher Education and Training, the QCTO, the Africa Free Trade Agreement, the South African government as a whole, as well as our industry partners, because obviously we need to get input from them as well and really get their buy-in. So this document still needs to be completed to ensure that it is all-encompassing. And this is where I specifically do need input, because obviously if I don't think of something that needs funding and it needs funding, then that would be a problem. So this is one of the places where I would very much need guidance from our experts. Now, I've only covered part of the overall project. There are also opportunities for further collaboration. So, for example, as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, there is an international cooperation program that is put forward by China. And here the opportunity is to specifically build training bases. So that is where they would capacitate a university to take one of these skills that has been standardized and absolutely fund them with all the equipment that they need, all the training information they need, so that they can put forward opportunities for graduates and students to be certified in those specific skills. There are also, international exchange programs, as well as bursaries to enable students that are, at South African universities to spend some time in China, training for a specific degree or diploma in one of the vocational colleges or universities that are available there. So this is very much an open opportunities to, engage with all of the experts from the different countries so that we can unlock, more of these opportunities for our students and really give them the benefits that we can from this international collaboration. So that is the short and or long and short of this discussion. If you're interested, please drop me an email. That is my NWU email address. If there's any questions, please do shout. But I really do invite you to be part of this work. I think it is very important work. I think it is, to the benefit of our students and graduates to have their vocational skills standardized on an international level. And I really hope to have all of you join into this important work. And I think that's pretty much me. Thank you very much. And thank you. Obviously, we've got some people that joined here in the seminar room. So thank you for everyone who attended here in person, as well as everyone who attended online.
Okay, Japie, thanks for a very interesting presentation. So let's see. I would like to encourage people. We have one question in the Q&A. People can either write the questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So let's see. I don't see how to, I'll just read the question. It's from Darrell van Verne. Thank you for the engaging presentation. What are the current challenges put forward by universities to enhance their curricula within the South African context? So Japie.
Yeah. So I think the main problem we've got here, and this is hopefully one where having it as a certification rather than mapped onto the national qualification framework is one of the big benefits, is the time it takes. So with current processes, if you want to change your curriculum inside of your program, it is often a 3-year process. To get the change registered at the Department of Higher Education and as well as the Council for Higher Education. The administrative process of changing your yearbook, of changing your curriculum is just a really long one. So lots of universities are in fact engaging with industry to make sure that they get the right information, to make sure that things are up to date, but to actually implement it inside of the university curriculums is very challenging from a time perspective. So by having the certification happen outside of the National Qualifications Framework and being certified by the BRICS Business Council, it is something that can happen a lot faster than what you can do in your NQF level qualification. So I think that is one of the hardest challenges that people face at the moment. Another one is really getting access to staff. Obviously, we know that teaching doesn't necessarily pay as well as industry does. So oftentimes there is a bit of a lack of skilled teachers and professors available to universities at this point in time, because they get poached by industry really quickly. So the idea is very much here again to leverage technology in order to make sure that the training is done, on a self-driven basis, using video, using automated grading, so the students can actually take part at the training base of in the specific training that they are interested in and get their certification without there necessarily needing to be a huge amount of lecturing done as what you would do also on the theoretical side of things. I hope that answers everything.
Okay. There's another question from Jakob Hoffman. Let's see. Thank you, Japie, also for touching on long-term care workforce with the support of technology.
Yeah, great. I don't think it's a question, it's more of a comment. But yes, I mean, obviously, this is something that I think is very important from the South African context. Is that, I mean, South Africa has so many different cultures and languages and things that I think it is a lot more complex to deal with some of the social aspects of jobs than what it is maybe in other countries. And that is something where both, I think there's lots of problems in doing it in South Africa, but there's also lots of opportunities. It gives us the opportunity to, engage with humanities and social and health technologies in a way that other countries don't necessarily need to engage to so much because of our, melting pot of different cultures and languages. So yes, I think that's definitely something where there are lots of opportunities for us to put forward, really great training for people.
Okay, we have a question from Nico or say.
Thank
So
you,
please
Martin.
go ahead.
So yeah, I afraid that this system may not work if we don't have a clear output, right? Things must be measurable. Like we have this very nice Future Innovation Lab at UWC. It's funded by Samsung.
Okay.
And the screening is very important of those students or those who come into the program, because it happens that they are funded every year if depends on how many of those students actually go and work in the industry. We're not just training just for training, but it must come with an outcome. These guys have been working in the industry. They have been, there's an output which is measurable. We're gonna just do things for the fun of it because it doesn't work that way. Otherwise, we just need a proper way to measure what we do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, so both on the input side as well as the output side.
Right.
So the screening, that's absolutely where the benchmarking comes in.
Right.
You need to know where the person is coming from and how long it's going to take to train them and what you can expect at the end of the day.
Right.
So the benchmarking is critical. And then, yes, I mean, that is absolutely where the BRICS Business Council is focused in the different working groups, is to see exactly where students go.
But then if there's no results, then the funding goes away.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Right.
without being able to directly measure it. It's why this is very much focused on vocational training. So even something like data science or data analysis and visualization, which is often seen as quite an academic thing, in this context is considered a vocational skill because you need to be able to do things. So the question is not what are the core knowledges you need, it is what do you need to do in industry to be economically viable? Those are the questions that we need to answer and create the training for. Because at the moment, there are already degrees that you can do at universities. It's not happening in a vacuum. So the idea of these certifications is very much to speak to industry. And that's, I think, one of the parts that makes it quite different, is that this would not be like an honors or a master's, because you would do a master's to also get access to doing a PhD. This doesn't give you articulation into a higher degree. This just says that if you go through this, you should be able to do this job. So that's why the future atlas of jobs is absolutely focused on how those jobs would look like inside of companies, not inside of academics' heads of, what they think would be a good idea. So absolutely, both the input and output needs to be measurable and reportable. It's also why this reports directly into the presidency. So the reports that get written are directly funneled into the presidency through the BRICS Business Council.
I have a question. I mean, first of all, I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
This is, a very exciting initiative, and I can see why there's a need for all of these certifications, but I sort of also want to maybe explore with you, with the more traditional university programs, and this differs from country to country, how prescriptive it is, and and most countries have an accreditation process, but it's sort of a minimum. And there also seems to be a need for more open-ended education. And I'm thinking of the history of electrical engineering. I heard this beautiful talk a few months ago by Carver Mead about very large scale integration and all the things that they were doing, and people getting invited in an open-ended way to work with for Fairchild Semiconductor, which was just this tiny little building, and then that sort of defined the future. So you sort of want to get people with core skills on the one hand, but then you also want things to be a little more open-ended, with the hope that people will develop skills as needed and learn how to learn. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think that is definitely not what this is. That is what your traditional universities and University of Technology should be doing. So they should be giving you the training that does allow you to look at open-ended problems. So if you do a master's or a PhD, you are working on a problem that by the end of your PhD, you should be like one of 10 people in the world that is specialized in that. That one thing is your specialization. And obviously at a master's level, it will be less specialized, at an honor level, it will be less specialized, but there is this focus at universities in also being able to, think critically, to be, creative and open and everything. And there is absolutely still a need for that in the market. So we cannot do away with that part of university. What these skills are looking at is, should there be 1 million people that can set up IoT devices? And that is a very strict set of things. So can they follow the best practice for doing those specific jobs that don't necessarily have a very open-ended, goal? And that is what we are trying to certify here. So that's why it's very much vocational in nature. So what can you do? There's absolutely still going to be a need for people that can think, in a research way, in a creative way, that can design new products. I mean, all of those things are still needed, but that is the role of universities. That they should be treating you like a grown-up that thinks creatively. And I think it's very important that our university, especially now, with things like ChatGPT, with artificial intelligence, that can do a lot of the rote work, the remembering, those things. Universities should lean into that and really enable students to take on the higher order cognitive tasks of design and really thinking outside of the box. But that's a different role. So that's not a vocational way of thinking. That is a university way of thinking. This is to say, someone that does machine learning and big data, that can be done in a research way when you're trying to solve very open-ended problems. But then there's a lot of work in machine learning that is actually very mechanical. And it's literally about recognizing problems in a specific context and seeing how they are similar to other problems and how you would solve them. So that is very much where the focus is here, is vocationalizing work that previously was considered open-ended. There's a lot of work now that, previously it would have been very specialized. Now it's not. And that's where the Atlas of Future Jobs comes in, is really trying to recognize, when is something an everyday skill that we should have lots of, and when is something a very, very specific skill that you should only treat, at master's and PhD level, because that shouldn't go away. If we lose that, I mean, then we're in trouble. And that's also why the skills challenges and the solution awards are separate. So the skills challenges has, hundreds of participants measured in terms of time. So can they solve a specific problem really quickly to best practice? But that's the skills challenge, whereas the solution and innovation awards are absolutely thrown open to say, these are the themes that we think are important, and how would you solve this, but in a open-ended research way.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you.
So let's see. The BRICS Academy, very exciting. We look forward to cooperation on curriculum development, technology, skills standards, formulation and development, as well as cooperation on BRICS auditorium, BRICS competition, possible much appreciation to share the recording video of this forum. Thank you. So on that, the NITheCS talks are typically within a few days posted, the recordings and maybe also the slides, I'm not sure.
Yes. Yeah.
On the NITheCS website. So you should be able to get a copy of this recording.
Yes, everything will be shared. And if there are any questions outside of that, my email is on the screen and shared, and I am an open book, and people should just reach out.
Okay, well, thank you, Japie, for a very interesting talk, and thanks a lot to all of the participants, those who asked questions.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day further. Bye.